talking, arrogant, throwing fits, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting a fool, this embarrassing is flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us. And y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Trying to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That's church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defined, can I describe it? Used to describe it as a young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. At every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face said I ain't always been the smartest, but I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeves, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people, I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson, I'm a bison, a beast. I'm high like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old, out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant. Tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retro fit. I guess so lit, I guess so bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeves, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. Happy Pie Day. Tuesday, March 14th, hanging out with the fellas. Special guest came to join the charades this evening. Cameron, welcome. Pinky, my guy, how you doing?
Good now, man.
Attaboy. Attaboy.
And ready to roll.
Cameron, where's yours? You know, you joined this show, you got to step it up a little bit, my guy.
You know, unfortunately, I don't have anything on my hand currently right now, except for my phone.
We gotta help Cameron out next time, Pinky. We can't allow guests to be coming on here and going thirsty.
Some folks don't do whiskey, Caleb. Some folks don't do whiskey.
I definitely do.
Hey, you know, if whiskey's not their jam, so be it. But I don't need guests being thirsty. All right, like we're just not being proper hosts if we're allowing our guests to be thirsty.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. All right, buddy. Man, Cam, how you been, buddy? It's been a couple weeks since we've seen you.
Yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of a wild ride, right? Obviously, for anybody that doesn't know, the other podcast that I'm a part of, which is the Mainly Broncos podcast, has decided to join forces with the MHRT network. So, and our first official stream is going to end up being tomorrow at 7:30 Mountain Time. So we are certainly, saddling up for quite a fun show for that one. Obviously, with free agency, and we'll talk about free agency tonight. But it's could be a lot of fun, and so I'm definitely excited to be part of the network. Excited to be a part of the show, and and get to talk some more Broncos, right? So I'm definitely excited. But yeah, it's definitely been a wild ride those last few weeks.
Awesome, man. It's good to have you guys. Awesome. I've caught you guys a couple times on that show. So I'm sure you guys will be great.
It's a ride, to say the least. Like we definitely like to shoot the breeze. I mean, we definitely don't like hold up. We don't hold back pretty much. Like we kind of just have people be pretty comfortable, pretty with anything that they want to kind of speak their mind on. We just kind of let them be free. So I mean, you
guys will fit right in with our show. Then we'll team up. We're good about that.
It's like what's that line in The Other Guys? I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly.
Yeah, you got to let me fly.
Yeah, exactly.
That movie is horribly underrated.
For sure. That's funny. I just recited that quote the other day for something. I can't remember what happened, but I said that exact thing the other day, and people looked at me because they didn't know the reference, and I was like, "Well, that was a wasted, brilliant quote."
Yeah. But
I got a lot of crow to eat with the Broncos right now. I know Pinky will make sure we talk about it here in a
We'll
little
get
bit,
there.
but
We'll get there.
I'll be eating crow here for a little while.
I don't know if I'd say that, but at least if I can get you on some positivity, I'll take it. I will take it.
I'm working on it, my guy.
if he
Realistic and positivity. It's hard with the Broncos these days.
I was gonna say if he has maybe like 3 more, drinks of whiskey in him, maybe you might start getting the positivity start flowing out of him.
Oh, that could go one of two ways, Cameron. I don't know if we want to test those waters right now.
Caleb's a rookie when it comes to that. See, I have the glass with me, and then I prepare for the refills with bringing the bottle to the table. So
Wait. Easy. Hey. Rookie is I think that's an unfair statement. I make sure that this is what I'm having tonight. I don't go beyond that. Whatever is poured in my cup, that is what I get for the evening. I'm not. It's Tuesday night, man, and I got a 2-year-old I have to worry about. Like, I don't have some of the flexibility you have with having older children in the home. You know what I mean?
I guess that's true. My kids pretty much like basically as long as the Wi-Fi is working, they just kind of leave me alone.
Yeah, they can pour their own cereal. Like once you get to that stage, once they can pour their own cereal, like you're good. I'm a long ways from there.
Oh, let's see. Before we get to tourney talk, trying to think if there was any good nonsense this weekend. Really just had a kind of a relaxing weekend with the wife. Obviously, wife had surgery Friday. Just kind of been taking care of her. I'm off for like 3 weeks of work. I actually got time to play some video games today. I was like, oh.
What were you playing?
I was playing Skyrim.
Okay. All right.
I hadn't played in a long, long time. So I started over. And at the very beginning, there's a hack where the guy you're kind of traveling with and following, you can beat the crap out of him and level up like all the way if you want. Now, I didn't do that much because it would take hours to do that. But I leveled up to where now I can sneak up on a guy and hit him with a dagger and the guy will just like die like immediately. That's how many times I leveled up from just beating this guy up. So I love Skyrim. I got NHL hockey. I bought that one. That is a hard game. That is a really hard game.
It's a fun game though. I mean, I think I had like NHL 22 kind of getting back into it, but I think it's because you had the ability to play like the retro game. I want to say it was like a what was it, the NHL 96, but you could use like the current players, like the retro. Yeah. So, I mean, but yeah, it's fun. I'm kind of partial, admittedly, to like some sports games. So I'm trying to like branch out of my own comfort zone and like play like, like some of those games that, aren't in my comfort zone. So like over the years growing up, like I've kind of got into the whole Call of Duties and the Assassin's Creeds and the, I haven't kind of dipped my toes into this new game that just came out, Hogwarts Legacy, which is, the craze lately. But
heard pretty good things about that one.
Yeah. Admittedly, though, I've heard some rumors about, and I'm a big Star Wars guy, that there's a new Star Wars game coming out that is supposed to be the exact same adaptation, if you will, and creation of what they did for Hogwarts Legacy. So I'm pretty excited about that.
We've got a good buddy of ours that we'll have on again at some point. He was our nerd friend, and it allowed all of us to come out of the closet and be nerds with him. But really smart when it comes to comic books and video games and all that stuff. Does his own podcast on all of that. And I was talking with him recently, and there is a rumor that's been substantiated, I guess, to an extent, that they're doing a remake of the Knights of the Old Republic for the PlayStation 5, and that's what I'm waiting for. That's what I want to get my hands on.
Man.
So we'll see. I haven't played video games, and I've never been a big video game person to begin with, so you can't really ask me about video games. But I haven't played. We bought a PlayStation 5 right when it came out, and I think my wife and I have a total of like 3 hours on it.
Respect. Priorities.
Yeah, not good. So we'll see what happens.
Well, see, what you need to do now is you need to get that busted controller for Merrick to just push buttons on while you're playing. and it makes it think that he's playing at the same
If
time.
he didn't have like the squirrel personality going right now, where the attention span on something is all of like 5 seconds, that would probably work. But the other day we were hanging out, and I took my eyes off him for 2 seconds to like do some dishes real quick while he was running around. And the next thing I hear is a yelp. And I look over, and he's got one of the dog's ears in his hands, and he's pulling the dog around the kitchen table by the ears. So I don't think I should get too involved with video games just yet.
Dennis the Menace. Yeah, baby.
He's his father's son.
No. Oh, but yeah, getting to play some games was good. I've got to play Madden. I hadn't played the new Madden. It's okay, but
Yeah, Madden. For the last 10 years, with it being the same, the only thing really changing is the graphics. Like, I can't get into it. I need something that takes it to another level, and it hasn't done that yet. And that was my all-time favorite game.
I just felt good beating the Seahawks like 49-0. Like, it just made me feel
Yeah,
good.
sure. That'll make you feel good. Zach, our boy Zach, Cameron, you have not had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but he started this whole podcast with us back 3 years ago or so, and has since had other obligations come up. But we used to play Madden with another buddy of ours. We had 3 nights a week, and we ran tournament styles, and everybody picked 4 teams. You ran them against each other. We'd go all night until the tournament was done. Zach quit playing because I started beating his ass so bad. He literally told me he will no longer play Madden, just like I will no longer play Ken Griffey Jr. baseball and N64 with him.
That game, Junior. Oof.
Zach's a cheat code. I played with him so much, I thought I was doing good. And he's like, man, you're really getting good at this. Yeah, we're like really competitive now. And I can't remember what I said, but I talked some trash, and he looked at me and laughed. And the next thing I knew, I was down 19-1 in the first inning, and I've never played that with him since.
Yeah, that's my son in Mario Kart. Like, I used to be really, really good at Mario Kart, and now that he's a video game savant, like I can't even like I can get up next to him, and we're right there neck and neck. Maybe if a miracle happens and the blue shell hits him, like I might get first, maybe. But other than that, he wins every time, and that's just how.
I will always play Mario Kart, and I'll always get down on some Mario Party. Nothing like a good game of Mario Party where you're just trying to destroy everybody around you as much as possible.
Man, we even got Ray in the house tonight. Look at this. We got a party now.
People are showing up when Cameron gets on.
Guess I am a superstar.
That is true.
Love it. Love it.
All right, well, let's talk some basketball, my man. Let's talk some March Madness.
The greatest single sporting event in all of sports. Is that what you want to talk about right now?
I don't know if I go that far, but I mean, it's certainly up there. Yeah,
easily the greatest.
It's debatable. It's debatable.
What are you putting above it?
Well, I mean, you got what? You got the Olympics. I mean, you got.
I love the Olympics, but it's not above NCAA tourney.
I mean, you even got the World Cup. I mean, things.
World Cup is second on my list.
So I mean, even the Masters, I kind of would, so I mean, like there's some fair stuff I think that you could probably throw into it, because I mean, hey, like if there's 2 things that like don't bring me to sleep, for one, it is it's that famous tune that you hear with the Masters. And then it's
Hello, friend.
And it is that famous song, "One Shining Moment" with March Madness. Like, I mean, so the March Madness is fun though, because like it's just it's like the ultimate sitcom, or even like the ultimate TV series. You get twists and turns. You have no idea what to expect. I mean, what was it like a year ago, 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago? But it's like we finally had our first 16 seed beat a 1. Like, I mean, like that just doesn't happen. Like, yeah, it just doesn't happen at all. And so I think the beauty of March Madness is it allows, so many teams that opportunity, to succeed. And like, so I love March Madness. I don't know if I would put it at like, to what you had, like the upper echelon of like, maybe like, things, that's my favorite per se, but it's definitely up there. Like, it's definitely up there. I will literally intentionally injure my knee, have knee surgery, and watch March Madness for an entire month of March. Look,
I'm going to be MIA the next 2 weeks, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. because I will be watching college basketball games all day, those 4 days for the next 2 weeks. This is why I have it number one. Because there is no other sport, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you disagree, I get it. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no other sport where everybody has an equal chance at winning.
I mean, what do you say, Pinky?
I mean, it's probably one of the ones that I would watch. I mean, I'll watch the World Cup if other people are watching it. I've watched the Masters in Vegas. It was cool because people were like excited. I wouldn't choose to watch that on my own. I mean,
Lame.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just not my thing. It's just not.
Pinky doesn't golf though, so if you don't golf, it's going to be harder to get into the golf. But Masters is definitely top 5 for sure.
Unless it is a beautiful Sunday afternoon, you're tired, you want to turn on something to make you sleep.
That's right.
I try not to do naps though. An old guy like myself, if I do a nap, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I think for golf, I think you probably have a little bit more intrigue now, just because, I mean, Tiger's kind of been on the decline, and now you're getting a lot more intrigue with a lot more golfers now that are being so successful. So they're kind of like throwing more of like a wrench in the intrigue of it, especially even with Live Golf now becoming a thing.
There's a little more competition.
And so I think, and plus I think that, now you have maybe 2 golfers that, at the top of their game that no one even saw being 1 and 2 at one point, many years ago, especially with Rory McIlroy and Jordan Spieth, and that would be Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm.
Yeah.
Scheffler and Rahm, Scheffler right now might be one of the most dominant golfers right now in the last handful.
He's on a heater for sure. He's on a serious heater. But you got, the PGA is really pushing both of those guys along with JT and Rory still. Yeah. I'd say those are the 4 faces right now. I think it's funny though how much they talk down on Liv and fail to acknowledge the fact that the only reason there's major changes on the PGA Tour right now is because Liv finally forced their hand.
Yeah.
If Liv didn't show up and do all of that, the PGA would have never changed. They wouldn't have these no-cut events. They wouldn't have these select fields. They wouldn't have bigger purses. None of that would have been happening if it wasn't for Liv. And yet these guys keep bad-mouthing the guys for leaving for Liv, which I don't get. It makes no sense to me. But the Masters is up there. The Open is always good as well. Those 2 are the top for sure. But nothing's like tourney time for me. Now, I grew up a big basketball guy too. That was kind of my jam. So, I've got some bias in there. But, we've got the first playing games tonight. I do believe Texas A&M Corpus Christi just beat Southeastern Missouri State. And then we've got Pitt and I'm going to draw a blank on the other team. I'll look it up real fast. Pitt and Mississippi State just kicked off. That's 9 minutes down in the first half. So we'll see who comes out of that. And then you got 2 more playing games tomorrow for those last spots. And then Thursday we roll starting at 10 a.m., baby.
That's right.
So you guys have a favorite, and I say that very specifically that way because to me personally, I don't think there is that one dominant team this year. So I'd like to get your guys' take on how you feel about that rolling through.
I mean, I got the guy the team that I think is going to win. And it's not my Jayhawks.
Is it the team that beat your Jayhawks?
No, I don't think they'll play them they wouldn't play them until the Final Four. But the Jayhawks can't beat Texas right now.
No, they can't.
And they look awful against Texas. But I actually I like Alabama because they can just run up and down the floor and score. I mean, they just run the score. They just got a good feeling about them this year.
So Alabama was was really good until a specific incident happened regarding that team and arguably the nation's top player. And when that whole incident happened, I'm not going to rehash it right now, but you don't know about it, just go look up Alabama basketball player police, and I'm sure you'll get everything you need to know about it.
And by the way, full disclosure, because one of the guys that's on the Mainly Broncos podcast, his name is Brandon Miller. They're not the same person. I just want a full disclosure on that one. The Brandon Miller on Mainly Broncos podcast and that Brandon Miller is not the same person.
Not the same. But Brandon Miller is the player I'm speaking of. There is a lot of people out there who believe he is the best player in the nation, but Alabama has fallen off a decent amount since that incident happened about a month and a half ago. 2 months ago now, and they have been struggling a little bit. And I don't even have them in the Final Four.
I'm not confident about any of the top number one seeds making it to the Final Four. But that's just like if I'm picking that one seed, and again, I don't know the field as well as a lot of guys, but that's just team that they score a lot, and that usually turns to be pretty good in March Madness. So,
well, I will say, admittedly, I have not filled out my bracket, and the one thing I will say is I intentionally didn't fill out my bracket because I knew we were going to talk about March Madness. So I wanted to do my homework first. I want to kind of gather, your guys' thoughts. I want to kind of, and plus I couldn't put Nebraska, in the Final Four, and they weren't even, picked to go to the NIT or even the Toilet Bowl. So I kind of have to, be more objective.
Cameron, you should know this by now, and if you don't, I'm going to give you the free pass. If you're from Nebraska and you love Nebraska, it's only for the football team and girls volleyball. If you're talking men's basketball, the team in Nebraska is Creighton, and so we're going to discuss Creighton. Creighton is the men's basketball team in Nebraska. I don't care what anybody else says. Nebraska men's basketball doesn't exist. It's Creighton. You root for Creighton. So that's how that rolls for us. So you want to jump on the Creighton bandwagon, and it's going to be a good year to do that. And the reason I say that is because they started the season top 10. They had a little bit of a lull at the beginning. They got pretty hot in the middle, had some issues towards the end of the season, but they're definitely one of the teams that could get on a roll here. The thing that gets me about this season, and when I say this, stick with me for a little bit here, this feels like a very chalk kind of year. And when it feels like a very chalk kind of year, those have a tendency, to the best of my recollection, of being some of the years that have the least amount of chalk in the end. And usually you see some of the best tournament games because of that parity, if you will, that exists in this season's field.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the beautiful thing, and we said it earlier, but the beautiful thing about March Madness, though, is like there's just so many things. Like it just opens the door for so many possibilities when you don't have parity, and especially, and admittedly, I was not watching games, but like I was following in, North Carolina had a down year, Duke had a down year, obviously with, Mike Krzyzewski, but it's just like, so it's like when you kind of have like stuff like that, kind of taking a little bit of a down year, it's kind of, we talked about golf earlier, but it's like the 1 year when Tiger Woods kind of stepped away. Like it allowed the entire playing field to just open up, and and you got the chance to not be as biased as you were with Tiger Woods. Again, Tiger Woods is a great player. Duke, North Carolina, great teams, but it's like it opens your aperture more for like these other teams. Like, oh wow, Florida Gulf Coast, they were a really good team. Or like Wichita,
Dunk City, baby, that was a fun year.
Yeah, like they're a really good team. So just it opens your mind a little bit more when you see it that way. And
I love that.
And I think that with college football, opening it to they're not going to go to a March Madness tournament, but opening it up to those 12 teams, I think you're going to see that a lot more.
I couldn't agree more, and we'll. By all means, you can come back and talk about that closer to the fall, because that's something that I've been pounding the table for years, and Pinky can attest. People say that will ruin college football, and I've said the exact opposite. It will force more parity, because more of those recruits will have a chance to showcase on the big stage And if you have a chance to showcase on the big stage, you have a chance to recruit those guys a little bit better. And so it's only going to make things better for college football.
Mm-hmm.
The NCAA basketball needs to be careful, though, because this talk of expanding the field again, I think, is a joke. I think 64 is where it needs to be, and it needs to stay there forever. 68, I'm okay with these couple play-ins on Tuesday, Wednesday, and letting a couple other teams have an opportunity. That's cool, but it should not go any further than that, because if you go further, you are going to force a watered-down product, and nobody needs to see that. Right now, the 64-team field, in my opinion, is perfect, and the reason I say that is because, like you brought up earlier, Cameron, we finally had a 16 beat a 1. And that is, it's not supposed to happen. It had never happened, but the fact that it has now happened, to me, proves that they have the field set at the perfect number.
Yeah, agree.
Now, Pinky, I believe I've got a graphic that I sent to you. Are you able to pull that up for us?
I've got it ready.
Okay, throw it up here, and I'm going to run down this for the people. For those that are looking at who should win, this is and if you're not familiar with all these terms I'm about to throw out, I apologize. I'm going to try and explain it in a very layman's term as much as possible. But these 10 teams are what this specific formula has come up with. And it's as you can see, it's combined Ken Palm, offensive defensive efficiency ratings, and under 50, meaning their overall net is under 50. This formula has predicted 19 of the last 20 national champions. 19 of the last 20. The only one it didn't predict was 2014 UConn, who went on just an absurd run. Shouldn't have had an opportunity to win the national title. They got hot right. They played well together as a team, and they won. Another beauty of the tournament. But 19 of the last 20 have come out of this formula. One of these 10 teams. Now, it doesn't mean that it's in order who's going to win. It just means when this formula is put together, the 10 teams that this formula picks, one of those 10 teams is going to win. So as you run down this, Pinky, your Alabama's right at the top there with Houston and Kansas. Purdue is right at the top as well, and then you start looking at some teams that weren't necessarily at the top all season, but were right in that mix with Arizona and Texas and UCLA. UConn has been really good this year. They actually beat Bama in Bama at the beginning of the season. I believe in November they won. I talked about Creighton a little bit, and St. Mary's is a bit of a sneaky play. Their offensive efficiency is off the charts this year. So one of these 10 teams is more likely than not to win this tourney. Now, Houston has not played a lot of top-level competition. It's just the nature of being in their conference. Alabama obviously had a strong season. The SEC was pretty good this year. So Alabama is battle-tested, but like I said earlier, they've fallen off a little bit since the incident with Brandon Miller. Kansas is Kansas. They're always going to be one of the best teams, but when tourney time comes, they get schizophrenic, and you never know what Kansas team you get.
Truth.
Purdue is solid up front. They've got arguably the best player in college basketball this year with Edey. But I've heard other people say this, and I fully agree. The tourney is usually dominated by guard play, not big men play. Purdue doesn't have a lot of strong guard play. It's not bad. It's just not strong. So can Edey carry that team? That's a good question. Arizona, they're solid across the board. I wouldn't say they've got anybody spectacular at any one thing. They're just consistently good at all things.
Another team that I've seen that I think actually, could be on the list, maybe in the top 15. Would be West Virginia. For a lot of good things about West Virginia.
I would not have West Virginia in the top 20, to be perfectly honest with you. Part of the reason they could be there is because they play full court, fast, both sides. And that's always been their MO. But they don't have the players to quite keep up with some of these other teams. The one I would say, Pinky, if we're throwing out some people, I would have Marquette as a dark horse. Marquette rolled through the Big East. I was about to say the Big Ten. They rolled through the Big East. They beat UConn. So Marquette would be a dark horse that's not on this list. Texas smoked Kansas twice. Big 12 champion. Beat them by double figures both times. UCLA
Big
would have been
12
scary if they didn't have their guard
champion.
injury. Big 12 tournament champions. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you for
Get
clarifying.
that right. Get that right.
UCLA lost a guard. That's going to hurt them, I believe. I don't know if UCLA quite has what they need to get over that. UConn is scary good. It's whether or not they're going to play consistent for 6 games in a row. Creighton is my dark horse personally because they can go on a run, but their play is not consistent as well. But they have the pieces. Like I said, they started the season in the top 10. So that's scary. And then St. Mary's, a lot of people has as an underdog to be looking out for because, like I said, their offensive efficiency is off the charts, just off the charts this year. So by this metric, like I said, 19 of the last 20, this metric has picked one of these 10 teams is most likely going to win it. If you're betting, keep an eye on these names. Now, Cameron, have you got any additional intel, thoughts that you've had, watching, researching?
No, I can confidently say no. But I will make sure that I study the screenshot.
I mean, we all know what happened last year. I sold my soul to get Kansas a championship. It worked. It happened. So
wish I had sold
house
mine
money.
first.
House money this year. I'm good.
So Cameron, you'll love this. I grew up. Obviously, I'm a huge Nebraska fan. Born in Lincoln. All my family's there. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
I grew up until I was like 7 or 8. I didn't even know Nebraska had a basketball team because it was all football every day, all day. And nobody talks about basketball, so I didn't know any better.
Okay.
My best friend at the time was a huge North Carolina fan. And he said, little kids, we don't know any better. We didn't ask anybody to figure it out. He said, Nebraska doesn't have a basketball team. Come root for my guys. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? Well, unbeknownst to me, I lucked out, and my buddy hooked me up with a really nice team to root for over the years. Now, there was a period of time where I can't say I was true diehard North Carolina because when the Fab Five rolled out, I was all about that Fab Five. That was my jam. So Jimmy King, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, all the boys, Juwan Howard, that's who I rolled with for those 3 years. But quickly, my friend made sure to stick around with me and bring me back into the light. So I've been a North Carolina fan since then. And watching them go up by double digits at halftime only to falter and lose to Pinky while he's sitting right next to me was a tough night last year.
Yeah. Well, no. We didn't watch the final game. We watched the Final Four.
All right, my bad. No, you're right. But still, I felt like you were right next to me. Awful.
You could feel my presence.
I could. It was bad. It was bad. So, last year was rough. I have been looking at this pretty hard, and I will say unbiasedly, I like to do brackets in a couple different ways. The first couple I fill out, I don't look at the bracket. I look at it game by game, and that way I don't try to look at a seeding or anything like that. I just look at the teams. And I unbeknownst to myself, got to the final game and had Creighton winning it all. And this was before I even saw this formula. So that startled me a little bit. When I came to that conclusion, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then I saw this formula and I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. So we'll see. Like I said, don't have a lot of the big dogs. I think because it feels like chalk, we're going to have a lot of fun upsets. 11-6, 12-5, 13-4. Pay attention to those seed lines because they always give you something to be proud of with the underdogs. And if you notice, there's one team on here who got real hot at the end of the year, won the ACC tourney, and is not on this list, and that's Duke. They did not start the year well. They were kind of middling for a little bit, but they did finish the season, I believe, 25-8. It's right in that number. And they finished really strong, and a couple of their All-Americans were showing up finally. So as much as I don't want to say it or think it or see it or believe it or anything else, the Dukies probably have a realistic shot at getting to the Final Four.
All right.
No.
I know, Pinky. I don't want to believe it either, but it's
Down with it. All right.
unfortunately
I'm going to
unfortunate
remove this.
possibility.
I want to get our smiling faces back on here. Duke Duke is down.
So, if anybody wants to see that again, reach out. We can get it posted somewhere or something if we need to, or share it. But that's a quick rundown of the tourney.
And I'm off Thursday and Friday. I'm in for it, baby. I'm in.
I work from home, man, so I'm gonna have multiple screens going. I assure you.
My poor wife. She's going to be sitting on the couch watching college basketball. She's a keeper.
Yeah, I mean,
True.
anytime
I forced
you
her
can
to watch
watch
wrestling 2 weeks ago, so, I mean.
That's good. We're going the 26th.
Oh, you're going to
We got
go to
WrestleMania
the
coming up soon.
Yeah.
ball arena? Or the road to WrestleMania?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I was just chatting with a guy I met at the draft last year, Chargers fan, and he's not sure he's going to the KC draft because he does have tickets to both nights of WrestleMania at SoFi.
Nice.
Oh, that's a beautiful stadium. I can't wait to go see that.
Yeah, I've heard really
Gotta
good
get
things
out
about it. Yeah,
that's the dream. Check out
Yep.
all the stadiums.
that's right.
Oh, all right, guys, you ready? Caleb, you ready?
I don't know,
All right.
man.
So we got
Where are we starting this off at, Pinky? Where are you?
We gotta
What
do this-
level are we starting at?
Well, we had some things happen this weekend that I feel like we got to touch on, right? We'll start slow, and we'll just talk about the Rams, basically just like, please take Jalen Ramsey off our hands, please, and just giving him to the Dolphins, which is a fantastic move for the Dolphins. Nothing says I'm all in than saying, hey, give me one of the best corners in the league when he's motivated. I think last year was kind of a down year, but he kind of knew they sucked and they weren't going anywhere. But
I saw a post. It's funny you start with Jalen Ramsey because I saw a post. Somebody did that trade in Madden, and Madden wouldn't even allow it. They're like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it happens a few times. Like, and I think it's not the first time I've seen something like that where like they'll throw out a trade that happened on Madden and it doesn't go through. But you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, it's one of the things that I think for the Rams case, if they didn't win a Super Bowl, it would suck. Not that it doesn't suck already, but it's like, you know, to trade Jalen Ramsey away. But the fact they won a Super Bowl and, you know, they threw all their picks away and, you know, they basically spent as much as they've done to get in cap hell, basically, but they were able to win a Super Bowl because of it. I think, you know, you wouldn't trade that for the world. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, so the fact that they were at least able to get that with Ramsey and others, it definitely softens the blow a little bit.
Pinky, what's my 10-year plan? What's my 10-year plan, Pinky?
Caleb would literally just like, he doesn't care about sucking for 10 years as long as you go all in at one point and win that Super Bowl, and then you can suck again for 10 years because they're so hard to get. So they went all in. They pushed their chips in the middle of the table. It worked out for them. Love that. And my point, I don't know why they're just not trading everybody, to be honest.
I kind of feel like, what do you do if you're Donald? I mean, you know, because Allen Robinson's on the block, right? I mean,
they already cut Leonard Floyd.
They cut Leonard Floyd.
Bobby Wagner.
They may be shopping Matt Stafford, although I don't necessarily know if I like. I'm kind of half and half if I believe that, or you know. But yeah, so you know, but I mean, like if you're Donald and even Sean McVay, right? Like, let's even throw Sean McVay in that matter. I mean, because there was contemplation about retirement for Sean McVay. So it's like, you know, if like, I just would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation, you know, like, you know, surely McVay had to know what was coming.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like even before, you know, he even retook, you know, the job, if you will, or assured that he was coming back. So it's just so odd that, like, you know, he comes back and Robinson's on the block, Stafford's on the block, you know, Donald. I mean, like, you know, I mean, so it just is an insane offseason so far right now for the Rams.
I think
Yeah.
I agree with Pinky. They should, everybody, dump Donald for a second. Dump Cooper Cup for a second.
I would imagine it probably will not be a second for Donald, though.
But what I'm saying is if that's all you're going to get right away, do it. Clear all that cap space and rise from the ashes. Because at this point, there is no salvaging what you have left.
Right.
I mean, you're going to end up third in the West. They're not beating the 49ers, and they're not beating the Seahawks right now. So,
well, at this point, let's be honest. I mean, they're at the same place as the Cardinals, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, but even the thing is, and look, this is going to sound like a little bit of a hot take, or maybe Seattle hate once again. But it's like, do we really trust that Geno Smith is going to take that next leap again? You know,
no.
Like, I mean, it's so. I mean, like, and again, maybe that sounds like a Seattle hater, but it's like, you know, I want to see it to believe it again. Like, you know, it's just like one of those things. Like, he had a great year. You can't deny it. Like Geno Smith and the Seahawks, they had a great year in Seattle. They have a pretty decent rookie core, and you're going to get Kenneth Walker for a full year. But it's like, aren't they going to take that next step? And like, I don't know.
I've got a good one for you, Cam. It's like watching Case Keenum in Minnesota. That 1 year was magical. He didn't play as well as Geno did this year, but like he had a really good year, took him really far in the playoffs, but he still turned back into a pumpkin.
By the way,
that's kind of what I feel like Geno's going to be.
And he ended up becoming a Bronco, right?
He did, unfortunately.
Because of that season. I think, Pinky, I understand where you're coming from, but I know you hate it when I do this, but you go all the way back to Geno at West Virginia. He's always shown more potential and a higher ceiling than Case Keenum's ever had, in my opinion.
That's
just for whatever reason, he was never able to put it together. Now, part of that is the Jets probably ruined him, and he's had to rebuild since being a Jet. And every stop after that was him trying to find a little piece of himself again.
Yeah.
I do think he can repeat last year, but I think that's his ceiling at this point.
Yeah.
But if you can get that play from Geno with the weapons they have around him, they beat that offensive lineup a little bit with this draft. They can shore up that defense a little bit more with this draft. Seattle is going to be competing for that AFC West. Now, I don't think they win it with San Francisco being what they are, but Pete Carroll does know what he's doing, and people need to pay a little bit more attention.
No, I know. Yeah, and I know that sounds a little bit of a hot take, or actually maybe not a hot take, but it's like one of the more like prove it to me. Like one of the.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, Cameron. I think this is a prove it year. I think that is fair to ask of them, and given the history that they've had over the last 5 or 6, it should be done.
And his contract reflects that. His contract's really kind of a year-to-year contract, even though it's a 3-year deal. It's still they could get out of it after year 1.
And by the way, not to sound like I'm a Geno hater or even a Seattle hater, but like because I even tweeted out, I like mad props to Geno. I mean, like the guy went out and had a career year and deservedly, you know, got that contract. Admittedly, I will say I don't know how or why he won Comeback Player of the Year because I don't exactly know what he was coming back from. But that's a conversation.
Totally agree.
That's
totally
a conversation.
That is not being a hater, Cameron. That is not being a hater. That is a legit. The way they give that award out specifically is a joke.
Yeah, but like, so that's a conversation for another day. But I mean, like, you're right. Carroll has it to where it's like this weird system where he can get those players to buy in, and it's possible that you can have it to where Seattle can be able to become that team.
They did crush that draft. They got 5.
Tariq Woolen, Kenneth Walker, who is a stud. I mean, I can vouch
both
for
their
that.
Tackles.
Yeah,
and they got another secondary
They're
that was pretty
two
good
corners, right? 2 rookie corners that they killed it on.
Tariq Woolen up for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
He should have won, by the way.
No. Quit hating on Sauce, baby. Quit hating on Sauce.
I watched Sauce hold every game he played, man. Every single game.
He's a great corner, and he does hold. But I mean, he's still a great corner.
If they don't call it, I'll keep holding too.
Pete, you only get away with it if you're damn good, and he's already damn good. That's the kicker there. And he should have been a Bronco. If the Broncos had, never mind. I'm being positive tonight, Pinky. I'm going to be positive tonight.
All right. So we can move on from the Jalen Ramsey. Great deal for Miami. They're all in.
Oh, steal
They really
for
need
Miami.
They really need Tua to be healthy, and I think they are an AFC contender.
Speaking of Miami, they picked up their 5th-year option for Tua, sort of shutting the door of kind of some Lamar
Brady
talk, or even Lamar.
Yeah,
it tells you what they believe in him, and I got Pinky to come on that bandwagon, and I said if they give him the weapons, he's gonna shine, and he did.
I'm telling you, like right now, like if you go back and you watch him in Alabama. Like he didn't necessarily have to be like the guy at Alabama, but what he needed and what he was at Alabama was, like, pun intended, the quarterback of that.
He's a good point guard.
But yeah, like the quarterback of that team, like he was a point guard. And when you have the weapons that they have, which is two number one wide receivers, literally, it's 2 number 1 wide receivers. I hate Tyreek Hill. That's known, but like he's a number 1 wide receiver. You have Jalen Waddle, tight end. They can kind of figure out. But I mean, like, they have a running game where they brought Raheem Mostert back.
Well, even their third guy, Sherfield, was pretty good.
And then you have, for a rookie head coach to be top 10 as far as a scheme play caller in Mike McDaniel, it's the perfect match for Tua or really anybody. So I mean, it's like, it's like a true quarterback for that team. So. Tua,
I think you brought up the point guard, the point guard thing, because I've said before, Tua is a John Stockton. He's not going to do anything that's just crazy flashy. He's just going to do the right thing at the right time consistently over and over again. And when he has the weapons he has, that's all he needs to do.
Which is perfect for McDaniel because it's like
Well, and listening, I'm sure you guys have heard it. Listening to those sideline tapes of him and McDaniel conversing in between plays and stuff, like that you can just tell that is a phenomenal relationship that they have.
Right.
And when you have that with your head coach and your quarterback, man, it's just going to be dangerous. And I read that Tua is taking judo in the offseason to help learn how to fall properly. And I've heard people laugh at it, but I think that's a bigger deal than people want to actually believe it is, because him on the field last year, he was arguably the MVP of the league if he plays all 17 games.
Well, and I'd say it's important to address the Bronco / Miami Dolphin elephant in the room here. They hired Vic Fangio, and I realize what, he was certainly maybe up there as far as the worst head coaches in Broncos history. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but like it's well known what he is and who he is as a defensive mind. He is up there, if not better than Wade Phillips. You put him in that room paired with maybe a top 10 play caller in Mike McDaniel, with Bradley Chubb and that kind of defensive schematics now with Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard.
Sick.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't have to play Kansas City because Fangio has no idea what he's doing or talking about when it comes to defending Kansas City. But other than that, yeah, that'd be great.
Well, no one does, to be fair. No one does.
Hey,
no one does.
The advice he gave the Eagles cost them a Super Bowl.
I'm just saying, no one still has.
Just saying, if they hadn't listened to Vic Fangio, they probably win that Super Bowl. Just saying.
But he is a ridiculous defensive mind, and it's a great pair. And it'll be a test, though. I will say it'll be a test what he can do schematically in the AFC East to combat Josh Allen. I think that'll be the interesting one to kind of see over time what he'll be able to do playing him twice a year.
You just got to try to slow him down. I mean, you can't.
What's he going to do with Aaron? Because I'm convinced he's coming to the Jets. After that Lazard signing, I'm convinced Rodgers will be a Jet, and that's going to be dangerous.
By the way, that is like the most ridiculous, to use a millennial term or a new millennial term. That's like sipping to like the 10th degree is what the New York Jets are doing right now.
Don't worry, we'll hire Nathaniel Hackett. Don't worry, we'll bring Alan Lazard in.
But
I've got some theories on that.
Yeah. By the way, this is a subplot of that. I actually think that this whole Aaron Rodgers wish list thing and stuff is actually a detriment to what is on that team right now. Like, I mean that. Because, like, if you think about it, when you think about the way things are being portrayed publicly, when you think about the way things are being portrayed of courting Aaron Rodgers, the courting of Aaron Rodgers is fine. But let's put the human element in this first. I mean, like, Aaron Rodgers wants Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, to join his team where you already have Garrett Wilson, maybe Elijah Moore, and you can move on from Corey Davis if you want to. But when you have and Odell Beckham Jr. as well. But it's just does Rodgers not realize that Garrett Wilson is there? It just feels like there's, obviously you want to bring in your own guys. There's pros to that. But I think when you think about, the players that are there in that locker room, when you keep adding to that room, you can only keep so many wide receivers in that room. And for as many of those players that want Rodgers in here, you may also be off the roster in the next day because of that.
So I think that's the general consensus. Nope. This is, if I'm wrong, I'll eat some more crow, Pinky. I'm a big fan of crow. But this is how I think this is going down. One, it's about I've spent 18 plus years at the exact same place since I was 21. I don't know anything different. I grew up at Green Bay. So I want to bring a little bit of familiarity with me. Two, they need a veteran presence in that locker room because that is a young football team. Cobb isn't coming in there to play. Cobb is coming in there to be a veteran voice. Fifth wide receiver, probably doesn't really see the field. He's coming to help teach and grow those wide receivers. Lazard's coming to be the number 3 because Corey Davis is hit and miss and incredibly inconsistent. If anything about Lazard is exactly, that's what I'm saying. He's gone. Lazard's taking the number 3. Garrett Wilson will be 1. Elijah Moore will be 2. Alan Lazard will be number 3. OBJ ain't coming there. I think Rodgers just threw it out there to see what the Jets are willing to do, to listen, to make him feel comfortable to show up. And then Mercedes Lewis, another vet, but he is a phenomenal run blocker and pass protector, which is a good add overall, with also being a veteran presence for having some younger tight ends on that roster as well. So I think it's more about making him feel a little bit more comfortable and allowing those guys to come and help teach and grow that young core that they do have that he knows is dangerous, but they didn't have the opportunity to get that last year. So these are going to be guys who can go to those wide receivers and say, this is what Aaron does, this is what he's looking for, this is what he expects of you, without him having to necessarily get on them to do it. That's how I'm seeing it, rather than he's asking for this wish list and making demands that are just not realistic.
Yeah. Well, and see, the other thing that I also think is a little bit of a detriment is, again, there's also pros and there's cons, because over the years, you sort of have that seniority in that sense. But if you're going to a new team, you're almost like overstepping your boundaries, of who you are as a player. And I think when Aaron Rodgers is coming in and he's giving the Jets in this meeting or whatever his wish list, you're almost thinking that Aaron Rodgers is throwing himself into the situation that he's head coach, right? I mean, because we talk so many times of why would, and we went through this with Sean Payton. Why would the Broncos, basically handcuff Sean Payton and say, and he did. I mean, he kept Christian Parker and he kept Marcus Dixon, but it's why would you put his hands behind his back and say, we want you to keep these, these players are basically in handcuffing. So Rodgers is basically coming in with his wish list, basically handcuffing the Jets organization and saying, I want to bring in my own guys. And so, that's kind of the side of it that I'm boy, that can have some negative connotations to it. It's and again, when you played in the NFL for as long as you have, you can definitely say that you've earned that right. But it's just it's one of those things you can kind of understand maybe how that can easily be perceived as he's kind of throwing his weight around, and and so it can have a negative connotation to it.
I can see that. There's a fine line he's walking right now, for sure. There's a fine line he's walking. I think he is able to do some of this, though, one, because the Jets put themselves in this situation without any other options. And two, I think through back doors, he's had conversations with a lot of these players in one way or another that he knows they want him there. And so this is kind of his way of saying, look, you guys want to go to that next level? I'm going to come, but I'm going to bring some stuff that's going to make sure we get to that next level. But I've never seen Rodgers as a diva. And I know a lot of people do think of him that way. I've never seen him that way. The last couple of years, I have just seen it as a guy who is at the top of his game, who has earned the right to take some time to think about things. I don't think the franchise in Green Bay always treated him properly. I think they did him dirty a couple different times. So I think this was kind of his way of kind of giving him the middle finger when people took that as a diva. So I might have some Rodgers-colored glasses, if you will, on. But I see this all as positive, more so than I do negative.
Well, and also if you're Nathaniel Hackett, right? Like, you had to at least hit on it once. You had to at least bat 500. Go into the Jets organization or go to the Broncos organization, missing out because maybe the Broncos wanted to bring him in, So, and by the way, this is like a subtle, like, bring back to the Broncos. Maybe that was a huge turnoff for the Broncos. So, like, maybe Rodgers had this wish list, and that was a turnoff. And they were like, basically like, you know what? We appreciate the fact that maybe we wanted you here, but unfortunately, you're kind of you kind of are having our hands be tied as far as not making the decisions that we need to, to help put the pieces we would like around you. And so, I mean, it definitely is twofold.
Yeah, agreed. And the other point I'll throw out there before we move on. Sorry, Pinky. One last thought I had. The Jets last year, if they had average quarterback play for the entire season, they would have been something like 11-6, 12-5. They would have smoked Buffalo in the playoffs if they had that opportunity. I think they would have been in the AFC Championship game, and they would have given KC a run for their money. So if you can get Rodgers, that's guaranteed above average quarterback play, possibly MVP level, depending on how motivated he is, how much time he wants to spend in the offseason. And I think people are dismissing that hand injury a lot more than they should. And I think that had a lot to do with the way he played last year as well. So you roll the dice, because if you get a prime Aaron Rodgers, and by all accounts, he's still got that left in the tank, you're looking at a Super Bowl contention.
Well, let me throw this out at you. We talked a lot about it last week, so we're not going to go too in depth, but with Rodgers kind of just sitting there, and you're only going to get him maybe 2 years, would you rather roll with Lamar for 5?
It's a legit perspective, and I think that it's a fair point, because, and it's not just the Jets, because if you're looking at it from the Jets perspective, you have to consider all the other teams. And so the fact that it wasn't just the Jets, but it was every other team. It was the Atlanta Falcons. It was the Miami Dolphins. It was all these other teams that basically said, "Oh, we're out of it. Like, we're out of the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes." Like, and so it's like, I don't know. I would probably say that the Lamar Jackson, idea is probably a little bit more tempting. And again, like, not to delve Bronco layered here, but it's like, it goes back to the Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers argument, because it's like, Russell Wilson, and again, I'm not talking about this past season that we currently saw with Russell Wilson, but it's like, I would much rather have a much younger quarterback, and a successful quarterback at that, than say a quarterback that is possibly going to put you in the hole that you originally had post Peyton Manning, which it's a risk that you're probably willing to take. And if you do win a Super Bowl or two, or you go to a few Super Bowls, it's been a successful roll of the dice. And if the Jets do that, it's been a successful roll of the dice with Aaron Rodgers. But with Lamar Jackson, you possibly could be talking more about a long-term solution,
larger
at
window,
quarter, and a much larger window, but then again, like, that's also kind of like the aggressiveness of where the Jets currently are. Like, they are legitimately quarterback away. Like, they are where the Broncos were a year ago. And so when you are aggressive and you are a quarterback away, desperate times call for desperate measures, and you do crazy things. And, and so maybe this crazy is going to match Rodgers' crazy, and and the mesh ends up being cool.
I like that you brought it back to that, because I wanted nothing to do with Russell Wilson. I wanted Aaron Rodgers. But in this situation, and I said this to Pinky, because of where they're at right now, I would rather do Lamar Jackson for the Jets than Aaron Rodgers. And I'm a big Rodgers guy.
We got to discuss this comment.
Oh, we're still doing this?
Look,
his own teammates came out and said that dude was not capable of playing. He was limping around the facility. His teammates came out and said that.
Look, I'm not the biggest Lamar guy. Caleb, you know that. I am not going to give him an issue for not playing. When you have no guaranteed money on the line, you're going to go out there hobbling on that knee. You're going to risk future injury. If he tore that whole knee altogether, he's not playing at all this year, and he's got no money, right? He's not franchised. He's not anything. They would have just been like, whatever, bye. There's no real loyalty from teams. There's not. So as a player, you do have to protect yourself. And I have no issue with Lamar doing what he did. Because you know what? They had a chance to sign him after year 3. He won MVP year 2. Year 3, he won a playoff game. They had a chance to sign him then. They didn't. That's on the Ravens. They messed up.
Well, you know,
this is the problem right here.
Well,
you're going to listen to the team doctor that said he was healthy enough to be out there and play over his teammates that said he wasn't. That's an issue.
I got the best response to this. Go watch Derek Wolfe on the Joe Rogan show. And the Denver Bronco doctors, after he had a spinal bruise, told him he had a stinger and he could go out and play. And then 2 weeks later, he was on the field, and every time he got hit, his arms went numb. And the doctors put him back on the field.
Well, and it's I think the other argument for degeneration, it's like, you know, again, for maybe with his point, it's like we aren't in the Baltimore Ravens, you know, room, like, so we don't necessarily know. But when you do have players publicly coming out in support of their quarterback, that truly suggests that, you know, he didn't quit, you know, and so. But even then, it's like when you also factor in, you know, that for what he was saying, what the doctor's saying, you know, that he probably could go. He also probably made the executive decision himself that he doesn't want to go.
Had to.
And so it's like, and when you take your own personal health above all else, that should take precedent. I mean, you should definitely listen to your doctors. You should definitely listen to what they're saying. And maybe take heed of what they're saying, especially the severity of the injury, right? Like the severity of the injury. But, you know, if he felt like he wanted to not play because of the contract situation, you know, he just didn't feel right, you know, for one. And
he wasn't 100% regardless.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, it always comes back to it is like, you know, obviously it's the playoffs and, you know, you don't want to miss it. But it comes back to if you are not 100% healthy and you don't feel 100% healthy, you should not be playing in that football game.
I got a good one. Hey, degeneration, do you remember when Peyton Manning got hurt against the Colts, couldn't practice all week, and then next week he has literally the worst game of his career against the Chiefs? In the game, he broke the passing yards record, which was the most pathetic thing to watch. I know because I was there. It was horrible to watch him break the record in between him throwing pick sixes because he was not healthy and he really couldn't. He should not have been playing. The doctor should have protected him from himself.
I'm a huge proponent of hurt versus injured. And it's something I learned when I was very young from a person I still consider to be one of the best coaches I ever had. But it was very simply put to me. You're hurt. You can find a way to get out there and play still. It's how much do you want it? How competitive are you? If you're injured, that means one of two things. You've already had something that has caused you to have to go into recovery, or you're on the verge of doing something that will cause you to go into recovery. And that's not worth being out there because you're going to put your team in a bad spot.
But Baker Mayfield lost all that money because he played.
Now,
absolutely.
Now, I will say this is a little bit of a wrench in this because I don't know.
Baker played like crap that year, too.
No, I'm not talking Baker, but like this is a little bit of a wrench in this. But it's like because I have no idea how he played and played at a high level. But Justin Herbert was beat up. I mean, he was literally beaten up to where he should not have played. And, I mean, he had the rib injury, and like he should never have played, like at all.
Now
and-
that depending on, and we don't know the specifics of the injury, but that is
Right.
something I would put into a hurt category, because if it's a
Yeah.
bruised or broken rib, it can't get any worse unless it ends up breaking to the point of puncturing your lung. But it's not going to get any worse, and it can heal while you're playing. So then it becomes a matter of pain tolerance rather than serious injury.
it's definitely one where it's feels messed up, but it's just like on the surface it feels really messed up, but it's like, again, it does go up to your pain tolerance for sure.
I do like what Degeneration's bringing up of like players wanting to have that passion to play for their team no matter what.
Oh,
and
100%,
at the end of the day,
yeah.
back in the 60s and 70s, and these guys are getting paid okay, but they're not making life-changing money back then. Like they did play for the love of the game. It's all a business now. And these business decisions, they affect, like Baker Mayfield, his business decision to play through that shoulder injury cost him probably $50 million.
And actually, in my opinion, with that too, though, if we're talking about love of the game, I actually had a lot of respect for Baker Mayfield. Like, when you think about the entire situation that he was under with the Cleveland Browns organization, and him point blank, quite literally resurrecting the state of Cleveland for football.
Right.
I mean, like, and everything that he went through and played through that much crap and played through that particular injury at that point in time. I mean, yeah, he didn't play at a high level, but he was trying like crazy to get that Browns team back to where they needed to, and that is 100% commendable, man, I don't know
he's
about
better than
that.
Cam Newton. I'm not a Lamar Jackson lover, and he's better than Cam Newton.
I would say that he's almost like within the Michael Vick territory of the rare breed, where he's right-handed, he's an athletic freak. Now, Anthony Richardson, that might be a little bit of a different story, because who knows,
Let's not get there yet. Easy, Cameron. Let's not go down that road yet. But
they're
I'm tired of people hating on Lamar. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. Go look at the numbers. His completion percentage is top 10. His winning percentage is top 5 all time. He has 0 wide receiver weapons. 0 wide receiver weapons.
No.
His offensive coordinator play calling was trash. Absolute trash. So for people to keep coming out here acting like he's Cam Newton, who Cam Newton was crazy overrated. And I'll go through those numbers if you ever want to too. Cam Newton was crazy overrated. Lamar Jackson, this is the thing, and this is square peg round hole, Pinky. I keep coming back to it. If Baltimore would just go out and get him a number 1 wide receiver, you would watch Lamar Jackson blow the fuck up. Period.
I will say you were talking about offensive coordinator. If they keep Lamar, I mean, that's the question, but it's just like, I mean, I will say this pairing with Todd Monken from Georgia and Lamar Jackson, if you've not watched what Georgia's offense was with Stetson freaking Bennett,
right?
I mean, they are going to do some damage if we have kind of, and especially like if we, Caleb, if we like to talk about the college game, even though it's 50 years ago. I mean, if you go back and watch Lamar Jackson in college, he ran a pro-style offense.
He did. Bobby Petrino.
I mean, it was successful. He was absolutely electric in a pro-style offense.
Tim, did he throw the ball a lot in college?
He did.
Did he look good throwing the ball in college?
You also knew who looked
good. Did he have any wide receivers back then?
Yes. Louisville had playmakers. Well,
hey.
So, I mean, if you're buying stock still in Lamar Jackson, I would continue to buy stock in Lamar Jackson. If you're buying stock in Justin Fields, I would buy stock in Justin Fields, because Justin Fields is in the Jalen Hurts territory right now. I mean,
they got to give him an offensive line, but if they do, Fields is about to be a top 3 QB in the league. Fantasy-wise. Let me clarify. Fantasy-wise.
I had to throw that Rich in there for you, Pinky. I had to throw that Rich in there.
I thought we were gonna go most of the show without talking about it, but you had to get it.
I didn't even bring it up, Pinky. He should be on this team. He should be here. That's where he should be.
That's what I get for inviting Cameron. It's my fault. Like it happens. I guess that leads us into Justin Fields and the last topic to talk about before we haven't even got to free agency. The Bears trade that number 1 pick. Fantastic deal for them. Fantastic.
I'm still going to say the timing just seems off to me. Now, if it was because Carolina came and said, we'll throw in DJ Moore, you jump on that because DJ Moore is the most underrated receiver in the league.
Let's be honest. There are 4 quarterbacks in this draft, and they all have question marks. There's not that like complete standout guy.
4?
If there was that one standout guy,
he's throwing Richardson in there with Levis.
They're all 4 of them are going top 10. That's happening.
But 4 of them have question marks?
They all 4 have question marks. In fact,
I don't think CJ Stroud has any, but
I don't think
CJ Stroud has any.
I think any of the quarterbacks right now, like if you look at that Georgia game, CJ Stroud is absolutely the number 1, like no doubt about it.
They win that game if Marvin Harrison doesn't get injured with a concussion.
They actually are the champions.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other times it just didn't look as great in some cases.
So hit us. What's your question mark about Stroud?
Just something about it. But I have him number 1.
Who's your number 1?
but what's your question mark about him?
So again, he's not like,
or he just doesn't do the pinky eye test all the way.
Well, look, he's not Andrew Luck. He's not Trevor Lawrence. He's not the like guy that you're like he's number 1 without a doubt.
Did you watch that Georgia game?
No, actually, I was somewhere I couldn't watch the game. I can't remember where I was.
You could watch the game. You could go back to YouTube.
No, I was.
Cameron's coming with fire tonight.
Don't be a dick, Cameron. Don't be a dick. But I saw the highlights. He did awesome. That's amazing. Again, he's my number 1. I'm just saying, like, he's not like a surefire guy that you trade up to number 1 to get. Bryce Young, the size. The IQ.
My question more with Young isn't the size, it's the durability. I think he's got some durability issues that could be a question mark.
I think people are going to look at him and they're going to see Tua. They're going to see a guy who's a little undersized and could have that durability issue, right? You've got
moves
Anthony
better
Richardson.
than Tua.
Anthony Richardson is literally the second coming of Cam Newton. Like he's absolutely second coming and faster than Cam Newton.
I don't
see it.
I don't know what category you can even put Anthony Richardson in.
But I trust Daniel Jeremiah a lot. Daniel Jeremiah said during the combine,
he's my homie.
His footwork was way improved. So
when you say homie, do you actually know Daniel Jeremiah?
No, exactly. No, I don't. He's just my homie.
Okay.
I just trust what he says, so he's my homie too.
That's where I was getting at. Pinky's a big homie of his too. I think Anthony Richardson didn't have a coaching staff at Florida that knew how to develop. I think that was the flaw and the issue down there. Now, here's the kicker. 90% of the NFL don't know how to develop either. So does he get to go to that 10% that will know how to develop? Because if they do, that dude's going to be really good for a long time.
So there's 4 guys there. I just don't see why you need to trade all the things that the Panthers traded to get up to number 1.
The reason why
that doesn't make sense.
Go ahead, Cam.
I was going to say the reason why they did, and I don't necessarily believe the report for a second, but you don't trade up to 1 if you aren't at least sold on all of the quarterbacks.
Right.
Like really, like you do not make that deal unless you are sold, on one of the quarter. I think the one intrigue though is the fact that going back to free agency is they signed Andy Dalton. So to throw Anthony Richardson's name within this, if you want Anthony Richardson to go number 1 overall, or even have maybe a Will Levis sit a year, I mean, ideally the 2 quarterbacks that should be starting day 1 this year is CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, you probably want to have sit.
They need some seasoning.
They need some seasoning.
Levis has some decision-making issues, as I would say, what is Levis' problem.
Anybody would behind that Kentucky O-line.
But I will say the most ideal fit, the most seamless fit, and I'm sure it's already been talked about enough, but I want to see Anthony Richardson with Shane Steichen and the Indianapolis Colts. With what Shane Steichen was able to do with Jalen Hurts, I want Richardson at Indy, and I want them to build the snot out of that offense, and I want Richardson to have that kind of success. So it just feels
That's
like
that 10% I'm talking about, Cameron. That would be part of that 10% that I'm talking about that could develop him. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, Pinky, I did a little bit of additional research. I don't know if you guys have seen this, if you've looked into it at all, but the deal Chicago made, I know you guys are aware, for those who are in the audience that may not be, every draft pick has a value. If you want to say the first overall draft pick is worth 100 points, and then you just go down from there, that is the layman's terms to explain it to you. Every draft pick has a value based on what was traded to Carolina in the first overall pick and what Chicago got back from Carolina. As of right now, it's about as equal as you can get in value. The way they did that is by saying DJ Moore is worth roughly the 15th overall pick-ish, somewhere in there. So the value then comes back. The thing that will throw this into the winds is if Carolina is so atrocious next year that Chicago then gets another top 5 pick next year with that number 1 that they got. Then the value gets very skewed in Chicago's favor. But as of right now, very equal as far as overall trades go. This is not a Washington moving up for Robert Griffin Jr., the third. It's not that completely out of proportion trade that it may look like initially on paper.
For me, the DJ Moore is like that's the non-starter. Like, I'm not trading you DJ Moore, or my rookie quarterback won't have anybody to throw to. So, like, that would have been like, I'm not doing it. I will give you another third. I'll give you, like, I'm not trading DJ Moore.
Well, I was going to say, to use the pinky eye test, I think if you look at like the entire trade, I mean, like, I honestly, on the surface, the fact that Carolina didn't receive anything back, was it Carolina? Yeah, it was Carolina. Didn't receive anything back except for one pick, basically. Like, it was just one pick, So I gotta say, like, I was a little bit shocked that, it was so landslided in favor of Chicago, and Carolina only got like one pick out of it. And so that was a little, yeah.
My biggest issue is, like, they could have just dealt like half of that to the Cardinals for 3 and still got a guy they'd be happy with.
But you're helping out a guy who probably watches our Sports Nonsense and Whiskey podcast and plays Call of Duty. You're helping out a quarterback like that.
I mean, he's not going to play next year anyways, but he's got time. He'll be fine.
I don't know.
Cardinals getting the number 1 pick next year.
Maybe they draft Anthony Richardson. Maybe we get chaos in Arizona.
Ooh.
No, what becomes chaos is, and Pinky and I love this movie, Carolina goes draft day on everybody.
Oh.
They trade the number 1 again. They move back. They still get somebody that they're happy with, and they recoup all those picks and maybe even more. And that, by all accounts, might actually be on the table. So was it 2 years ago, Pinky, that I said this draft's about to get out of control, and it went and it got out of control? This draft might end up being the same because Arizona's going to trade down. I can't imagine seeing them stay at 3. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to jump up there. You got Houston and Indy up there that both need quarterbacks, and they're going to take them. And then them dominoes start falling real quick.
Well, after this trade happened, Arizona's in the best possible spot they can be in.
Absolutely.
Because now, if you want to jump Indy to get that quarterback that's left, you better call me.
The best player available. Yeah. So
great deal by the Bears. I don't really like the Bears organization as a whole.
Not Bears.
That's a good.
We know how I feel about Justin Fields. If you've listened to us at all, and I still think the Bears are screwing him. If they do not refix that entire offensive line, which they should have already done in free agency, and instead they spent money on the defense again. I just don't get it. I don't. But if they get a couple offensive linemen in the draft that can play and they can protect Fields, I'm telling you, man, you're about to see a young man go off next year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So shifting gears, talk a little bit about free agency.
Broncos free agency.
Can we start with Broncos? Can we just start with Broncos for a change? Because I want to just eat my crow and be done with it. Okay.
Black
I want to just eat the crow and be done with
good.
it.
We can. I mean, if that's what you want to do, Caleb.
Start with them. I will eat my crow right now, and I will say I didn't see any possible way that they were going to be able to sign top tier free agents. I didn't see it.
Well,
I thought they were going to overpay for middling guys, and they blew it out of the water with the 2 offensive linemen to start.
They did. You know, they absolutely did.
So I'll own that. Sean Payton has a bigger voice in the NFL still than I thought he did. Patton is worth those still.
The best quote that I saw on Twitter was a replay of Chris Sims on the DNVR podcast of him saying the first thing Sean Payton's going to do is go out and get his big fuckers. And that's what he did.
Yeah. Well, and that's what he's done. I mean, he builds his offensive line, and, you know, I know there's questions, you know, and you see it all over social media, you know, with Mike McGlinchey and stuff like that. But it's like, you know, when you have the opportunity to, you know, outbid the Bears, you know, for offensive line help of Mike McGlinchey, that shows how intent you are to create the kind of identity that you want for this football team. And the fact that, you know, they were able to pay top dollar for, you know, I just think that, you know, ideally, you know, I'll just say this, McGlinchey probably wasn't my top tackle that I would have been interested in. It was sadly the tackle that the Chiefs signed, you know, Juwan Taylor to replace for Orlando Brown. And it was just simply because of durability. My only con for McGlinchey is he's a little bit penalized a little bit, so he can get a little bit grabby and stuff. But I mean, still, you have the opportunity to get one of the 3 top tackles on the market. You did it. And then you go out and sign. We talked about Lamar Jackson earlier. You go sign maybe one of the top guards in free agency, who, by the way, this is a very underrated point. I did tweet it out. You can go follow it. My Twitter handle's in the picture there. But I mean, like, I tweeted it. I said it's a little bit of an underrated point. Lamar Jackson is a running quarterback. Russell is definitely not the running quarterback that he once was or is, but he's still a scrambling quarterback, an off-script quarterback. And Ben Powers was part of that offense, like part of that offense that with that kind of creativity.
So, I immediately went out and watched highlight video on Ben Powers. And I could not believe all the pulling they had that gigantic man doing.
He's mean.
And he
literally. You're talking about mean. That's why they got McGlinchey.
Right.
It's not just the skill, and yes, there's some durability issues, but the skill combined with the mentality that he's bringing over. That's the whole point of getting him over some of the other guys that were on the market.
Yeah, and especially you have to think about he's coming from the San Francisco 49ers, a very well-coached football team who kept Brock, I suck at Iowa State Purdy, I mean, clean. Yeah.
Except for the Eagles game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Philadelphia Eagles. They led the entire NFL in sacks. But
you go back 2 years, though, and Purdy would have been arguably a top 10 pick if he came out early.
I also said the same. Okay, first off, I didn't say that about Trevor Siemian, but it's like, you know, do you see where Trevor Siemian was to where he is now? It's a complete like shock. Anyway, that's a side story. Anyway, but McGlinchey, like, he was part of that offense with San Francisco, and he kept that quarterback clean, and that is a huge plus for what the Broncos truly need to do. And McGlinchey's a great run blocker. Like, you know, they are going to run the dang rock. You know, and so we'll talk about some more free agents and stuff like that.
There's been some folks out there about the McGlinchey thing, and, you know, some people not liking it or whatever. Obviously, Sean Payton liked it, right? I'm going to trust Sean Payton. That's what he. I'm also going to go. I'm traumatized from the 11 years of right tackles I've seen, the 19 of them play.
Yeah,
that have all been a turnstile, that have not done anything. I'll pay anybody.
Say that
I will
number
just
again,
make it
Pinky. Say that number again.
19.
How many? Oh,
19 starting right tackles since Orlando Franklin.
What's worse?
that's real bad.
What's worse? The quarterback turnstile that we've had or the right tackle turnstile?
Oh, the quarterback for sure, but it's not far behind.
Yeah.
It's not far behind.
It's razor thin.
Yeah. I got to say, though, I was, and I understand the trepidations that people might have with McGlinchey's contract in the sense of Juwan James, because that was the last big contract, say, that we handed out to a right tackle, right? Like, but again, not to kind of like use a separate sports analogy, but it's like, it's what the Rockies should be doing to be bringing in these high profile free agents. You have to spend money to bring them here. Like you have to spend money in order to lure them here, and money talks. And
Cameron, we don't talk about the Rockies on this show. We don't bring trash to this show.
It's okay.
Let's not devalue our own worth.
But it certainly helps that you have Sean Payton and Zach Strief in the building.
But you're right. But you got to spend the money on the right free agents. You're using that analogy. Look at what the Rockies did. They spent money on who? Which was a complete joke and worthless. Chris Bryant. If you're going to spend money just to spend money, that's a problem.
But still, like they spent it because it's just like it's still it still was a need. It still adds question marks and question marks and question marks. But I mean, it's just but it's like I don't know. Like when it just boils down, like it is very clear what the identity of this football team is. Yes, and like to go back to some comments earlier, they signed Michael Burton for fullback. They signed Chris Manhertz and Lil Jordan Humphrey, another blocking tight end. If you don't know that they're not going to run the football after those signings, I can't help you. They are going to run the football.
Well, look at the veteran running back they just signed today.
Yeah. But fun fact about that, by the way, Samaje Perine has not fumbled the football since his rookie year.
5 years.
Nose to the grind. I'm not going to do anything flashy, but I'm going to play the position exactly the way it needs to be played. To me, and I said this earlier to Pinky, that signing right there to me says, regardless of what the team is saying, because I never believe what the team is saying about an injured player, but that tells me that Javonte's recovery is going very well. Because you wouldn't bring in that kind of veteran running back unless you had a star that's going to be playing. And Javonte, make no doubt, has the potential to be a top 5 running back in the league, especially with this line that they're building.
I still think Latavius is coming back. I still think he's coming back.
See, I don't know.
There's no reason to pay him and bring him back at this point.
Well, but I will say, admittedly, I thought he was coming back. But when you sign a back like Samaje Perine, who is kind of the same back as Samaje Perine, I don't know. Like it's a little bit interesting because it's like, why would you sign a duplicate, as a running back? I mean, obviously, locker room, it certainly would help the locker room, but I think that I don't know if it's about Javonte as much, because I still don't know if I believe. I hear what you're saying, Caleb. Like, I don't know if I believe that he'll be, that far along. I don't
think he'll start the season. I'm thinking halfway point, he starts getting back on the field, and by the end of the season, he's starting to get back into form. But the point of the Samaje is not this year, next year. When Javonte's a full go again, you have that veteran presence that can give him spells when needed, the same way he did for Joe Mixon in Cincinnati.
And this is a separate layer to it with the Perine, but I wonder if the other reason why, aside from the fact it was a little bit of a nice pickup, but like with the way the money is being shifted around and then them signing Michael Burton to a little bit of a lesser deal, they can now afford to spend on some other positions,
right,
like safety and cornerback, or continue to bolster that offensive line. And this was in the chat earlier, the center position, like, potentially bringing in the center position. So, maybe go out and sign Ben Jones for like a year or two, and then go draft your center with your first couple picks, go the Cam Jurgens route that they did down in Philadelphia. So I mean, like if you could be able to do that,
drafted him last year.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a tempting solution. And especially if you are going all in, you're throwing all the chips in, and that's what that would suggest of being this aggressive in free agency, that you're being this aggressive with your quarterback that people were shafting all year long and hating on. I mean, like, if they're putting all their chips in this basket, being that kind of aggressive, you might as well. Yeah, you might as well sign a guy like a Ben Jones.
For running back, the one guy, again, we only got 5 picks as it stands today. We'll probably have some more. I feel like we're going to trade one of our third rounders to get a couple extra picks as well. I agree with Andrew Mason on this. Deuces Vaughn would be pretty good in this offense.
I mean, hey, you have Oklahoma, you have K-State, you'd have a nice Big 12 rivalry in there. Sean Payton has had a K-State running back before who defied the odds, in Darren Sproles. I mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, I think he would be certainly electric, but he's not the only one. I mean, you got
there's a couple, but that's one that I've seen that I just like, man, that looks good.
You got the electric kid that blew up the Senior Bowl, Spears from Tulane, I think it is.
Right.
And then you definitely have some options. And I'm just throwing this out here. You might be able to sign Kareem Hunt to a little bit of a lesser deal.
I wasn't going to bring it up. But Pinky, didn't I say that's who they should have immediately gone after to play the Kamara
felt like
role?
that should have already been done, before P-Ryan.
Well, but still, we're still in the legal tampering period. So, I mean, it still very well could happen. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, I will say it's very unlikely. But, I mean, weirder things have happened. So,
and
I think the other thing about the Hunt, if you look at it from a big picture view, I think there could be some people in the building who are scared to bring him in because he would outshine Javonte. I think there's some fear of that, and they don't want to see that happen.
Well, and given still a little bit of his history,
I don't think Sean Payton cares about that, though.
I'm not talking about Sean Payton. I'm talking about the trash GM.
That's a conversation for another day, Caleb.
This guy needs to be on our show more often, Pinky.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of being a dick to me tonight, so I don't know if he's coming back.
All right, move along from the Broncos. That was enough crow. I'm full. There's a couple other big signings around the league that I think we should run through.
I got to talk about the Raiders, fellas. We got to.
What happened there?
Jimmy Garoppolo, boys. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Wasn't just Jimmy G.
I mean, but that was a big one.
No, it wasn't the big one.
I feel like Jimmy G is a lesser Derek Carr, so I don't get it.
Derek Carr is like – actually, Jimmy Garoppolo is like what Derek Carr would be as a statue.
I'm not a Jimmy G guy at all. Like, I've watched him play. The talent around him and the coaching around him was fantastic. Jimmy G is just a guy.
I just think that it's just I've said it before on 5280, and I think I've said it before on Mainly's podcast, but it's like, one more time again, I don't think McDaniels truly understands the magnitude of what he was creating when, one, if it was true, the rumors that he was doing alienating Derek Carr, reading emails out publicly to the players, I mean, like, I don't really realize consciously if he understands exactly what he's doing, because it's like, I mean, you're alienating your franchise quarterback and you're alienating, just so happened, a wide receiver who came to your organization because of that quarterback. And so you're alienating him. And, oh, by the way, you rumor to have Darren Waller and maybe Hunter Renfrow on the block. And, oh, by the way, Waller ended up getting traded today for a third-round pick. So it's like now you're talking about an absolute mess of a storm now with the Raiders. And, oh, by the way, I said this on Twitter. It might cause a stir. I don't necessarily mean it that the Broncos should certainly sign Josh Jacobs, but Jacobs should sign with the Broncos in spite. And what I mean by that is Jacobs should run to the Raiders front office, not even sign the tag. They placed the tag on him. He hasn't signed it yet. Rescind the tag, make him a free agent like Josh Norman was with Carolina before he signed with the Washington Redskins at the time, and make him a free agent. Do it out of spite. Like, force your hand and, truly make the life miserable down there in Vegas. So
let's be honest. Devontae Adams is wishing he had stayed in Green Bay. And if he had stayed in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is still in Green Bay, and we're not even talking about him going to the Jets.
Right.
So you want to play revisionist history? Devontae Adams is wishing he had a time machine right now, guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So again, like, I think Jimmy G is going to be an interesting quarterback in Vegas. Going back to Jimmy G, I think it's going to be an interesting quarterback in Vegas. But if you can honestly tell me that Jimmy G is going to go toe-to-toe twice a year with a quarterback that, who basically was a Kyle Shanahan merchant, within that offense, if you can truly say that, like, he's going to go toe-to-toe with the guys like Justin Herbert, maybe a better version of Russell Wilson of what we'll see with Sean Payton, and, oh, by the way, that's a side story. But more importantly, Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, like, okay, like, you will win $2 billion if that's the case.
I'm convinced now Josh McDaniels is that dude who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and everybody just smiles and nods.
Well, that's with a below average O-line. Like, I don't know how Jimmy G's going to, like, he has injury issues to begin with, and then you're going to put him behind an O-line that can't protect
and a
really
defense.
Well. They can run block.
And a defense that's only carried by Max Crosby.
Yep.
Who's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love Max Crosby.
Yeah,
that's
great.
One of the best DEs in the league. But that doesn't do you any good if you're getting double and triple team because there's nobody else to help you.
Yeah. So
degeneration, you're right. They were trying to trade Jacobs before the beginning of last season. They just didn't get it done. Yeah,
they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, and now they're regretting it. Horribly regretting it. And that's all on Josh McDaniels. I'll guarantee it. He's doing Broncos 2.0 right now in Vegas.
Yeah.
Wait, did I see that right? He got the non-exclusive?
I think every single player this year that got tagged got the non-exclusive tag.
Which is basically you can sign them, but then you owe two first.
The NFL, they go in ebbs and flows. This year they're all working with this non-exclusive to see what happens.
Well, and actually, it's basically the offer sheet tag.
Yeah. You go out. You're right. It's you go out and tell us what your market value is, and then we'll tell you if we want to match it or not.
No, nobody's going to give you that because nobody's going to sign a running back and give up 2 firsts. Like that's not going to happen.
No.
But they could. Not saying you did, but no. But I will say, though, to circle back on something with Lamar Jackson, that is a great call, I would say, by the Baltimore Ravens, because that's a test that you're going to prove what Lamar's worth, especially in the case of he doesn't have an agent. Like, that's a really cool test.
That's what's killing Lamar, unfortunately, is because he didn't have somebody in his ear going, hey, they're colluding. Don't test these waters right now.
Yeah.
And I don't care what the NFL says. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, he's not getting it because of injuries. You're not getting it because you have to give up 2 firsts. Bullshit. 26-year-old league MVP going into the prime of his career. If you give him weapons, he will ball out. 2 firsts is steal for that.
Who's giving Lamar a call? I mean, is it the Tennessee? Is it?
Dude, you want to run down the list? Because Washington should be on the phone right now.
Atlanta should be on
the phone. Atlanta should be on the phone.
Atlanta just spent way too much money. They're not going to be on the phone.
They should have been.
They should. They should. Yeah. I agree.
Miami should have been on the phone.
The fact that for whatever reason everybody keeps coming out saying Lamar turned down all these deals, and then Lamar finally comes out today and says, "Hell no, I didn't. They're offering me shit."
Well,
I'm going to believe Lamar in his camp because Baltimore has done him dirty. And they continue to do him dirty.
Well, but also I think it adds layers to it with him not having an agent that makes it a little bit complicated.
It kills it. It kills it, absolutely.
But I will say, though, the reported deal that he did turn down at that time was actually not a bad deal because, like, you're talking about like 3 for, like, what was it, 133 or something like that, and fully guaranteed. Like, somewhat of that deal is basically what it was. So, like, you're talking about 40 was it 44, 45 million? Like at that time, that was a really good high-end deal. And so I think maybe looking back on it, he probably should have taken that. But I mean, you know, I guess that's kind of the game.
His value is worth more than that deal. Whether or not it's a reasonable deal, I think his value is worth more, and he agrees with that. And Degeneration X, to tell you why they're colluding is because the NFL owners want nothing to do with guaranteed contracts. And the closer these players get to that number of being fully guaranteed, that's what the owners don't want to see. So anything they can do to knock that down and keep that from happening, they will do.
And Caleb, why is that? Can you answer why they don't want to do those guaranteed contracts?
Because NFL owners aren't as rich as people want to believe. And the reason I say that is because when you put a fully guaranteed contract out there, you got to open an escrow and you got to put 2/3. Is it 2/3?
All of it.
It's not all of it. It's not all of it up front. You eventually have to put all of it in there. But up front, it's 2/3 or 75%.
Every guaranteed dollar has to go in escrow.
I don't know, Pinky. It's within the first couple of years it all has to get in there. The initial amount, though, is a percentage of, and then it all has to then be, I can't remember exactly. I'll do some research. I'll look back into it. But if the research I'm remembering correctly is it's a percentage of the guarantee has to go into escrow the day the deal is signed, and then the rest of it has to come in within a certain period of time. And plain and simple,
and that's not
while the
including
NFL is
cash
loaded, the
signing.
owners, a lot of these owners are old school money, and they have not made the new money like the NBA owners. They are not as rich as people want to believe they are, and they don't have the money to throw that out there. And if they do, a lot of these owners are going to have to sell teams to people who do have the money, and they're going to lose their place at that table.
I mean, that's exactly why Sean Payton's a Denver Bronco and not a Charger.
Damn right it
have
is.
the money to get
And actually, honestly, there's a person that probably deserves a lot of blame for this. And it's the guy who probably could have been a Denver Bronco in 2018, and that is Kirk Cousins. If you go back and you look at Kirk Cousins, and he signed that deal with the Minnesota Vikings, it was the first fully guaranteed contract. And I don't think no one probably realized it at the time. Maybe initially some agents and some probably NFL executives probably were like, oh, whoa, he received a fully guaranteed deal. I don't think they really understood the gravity of that situation at that time. And now you're starting to see a lot of contracts now for quarterbacks be fully guaranteed. And not just quarterbacks, but like you're seeing some other quarterbacks be dabbled in there. That's not just quarterbacks that are fully guaranteed.
Look, let's be honest. NFL players see them NBA players. That's exactly what's happening now. The NFL players see these NBA players who are 12th man on the bench getting 70, 80 million 5-year deals fully guaranteed. And they're going, hold up. These dudes who don't even play on their teams are getting this kind of money.
And screwing
and
cap
our league
space.
supposedly blows in revenue the NBA out of the water. And we can't get our contracts to be fully guaranteed when we're putting our bodies consistently on the line. And these guys can cut and run, dip us at any moment. No, hell no. So NFL players, they're seeing this, and they're going to keep pushing. Now, here's the question. This is where it's going to get really interesting, because Lamar has these things that people can nitpick. He's a running quarterback. He's got an injury history. Because of that, the NFL owners can get away with not paying him, and people don't think it's collusion. What's going to happen when next year Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow come up and they say, we want fully guaranteed money? What are people going to say about them? What are they going to do then?
Well, it's kind of the other layer to the whole Lamar Jackson discussion, because it's, you know, if you look at it from the standpoint of like, well, it's look at it from a different position. And actually, Jimmy Graham started this when he was a tight end because he wanted to be paid like a wide receiver. But it's like, you know, if you think about it from that standpoint, like the moment, even from that vantage point, like things just wanted, you know, players wanted to be compensated for, in essence, the player that they were or are at that current time. And so I think in Lamar's weird case, like there is a case to be made that he should be paid, in essence, like both a running back and a quarterback for that matter, because he's Like, he's clearly shown that he can be that kind of that running quarterback or a quarterback, but he's also shown to be a very, very productive running quarterback, which in essence is a running back. So it's like, so like there's this weird dichotomy going on with Lamar Jackson to where it's like he can create this weird situation with the NFL and a weird precedent for the NFL for guys like, for future context, like guys like an Anthony Richardson. So say he succeeds and he goes into the NFL with Shane Steichen, who we said earlier, or even actually Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts would be a prime example. Like Jalen Hurts would be looking at that exact kind of deal and saying, like, okay, well, here I am. Like, well, let's treat me as like that running back type of deal with that quarterback laden deal. So it's like, it's so complicated. I'm not a big financial person, but it's like if you boil down to it, it's like there's probably ways you can boil down to paying them like a running back and then also paying them like a quarterback.
You're right. And I've always said the salary cap is a joke and it doesn't mean anything, because the beauty of numbers is you can make them do whatever you want to do, especially in the NFL where you can constantly convert salary to signing bonuses and this and that and the other. It doesn't matter. What matters is that number on the dotted line that says you get no matter what. And that's what the players are starting to look at. That's what they're starting to care about. Not what the contract says you could make, what you're going to definitely get. And the thing, I will continue to beat the drum for Lamar Jackson in this sense. People want to talk about him missing games. You could, in my opinion, put 100% of that blame for him missing games on Baltimore and the way they're choosing to run that offense, and the fact that they didn't get him any weapons to throw the ball to, and they continuously call more running plays for him than they do passing opportunities. So Baltimore, I do feel to an extent, purposely has devalued Lamar Jackson so that this exact situation would play out in public and make him look like he's not worth the money.
And in their current construction of their roster, I would not pay him that money. The way that they're currently constructed. Yeah. I just couldn't do it.
Another factor within this and the fully guaranteed deals is it's also going to force the National Football League as a whole to ditch the salary cap. Because it's, if you look at it and all these deals are going up, obviously every single year we see it, right? Like every single year the cap's going up, potentially some new TV deals and, stuff like that. The TV deals is like well down the line because you can't really predict that. But it's just like, it's possible that, the more things bloom and the more these contracts explode, like a $30 million wide receiving contract or, a $20 million wide receiving contract or, something like this, like you always see it with the market is that the market is always going to go up. And especially with the case of quarterbacks, we saw with the case of wide receiver with Tyreek Hill, it is always going to go up. I don't know if the running back position will ever go there, but, I do think, though, that it's going to get to a point where the NFL owners and the salary cap magicians are just probably going to hate it so much. They're probably just going to be like, we're going to forced to get rid of the salary cap.
What's the problem with the running back position, Cam? Is that typically when the running backs get to that point where they get that second contract, you're paying them for what they've done versus what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And they don't typically live up to the contract that they get.
There's few that
unfortunately
do. That's true. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were abused and used for those first 5 years. And that's the way the league's using that position. This is what I'll say about the salary cap, Cam. And I am always, and you can go back and listen to anything I've ever said or done, I am always player over organization. And that comes down to the simple fact with the NFL that the organizations have no loyalty and they will cut ties immediately, which is why I believe fully guaranteed contracts are needed. But I will say the one thing the NFL has done right to keep competitive balance is by having the salary cap. So what I would suggest and what I would recommend they do is go to fully guaranteed contracts, keep the salary cap, but you put a percentage on what you can spend max per position.
Yeah.
So quarterback's going to get a fully guaranteed $100 million 3-year deal, right? Because you can only spend a max of 20% on the quarterback position.
Yeah.
So if you put that max percentage on there, get fully guaranteed, and then keep the salary cap, to me, that's the best of all worlds. Because if you don't, you get into what baseball is running into, which has become an absolute joke. And the NBA is on the verge of that, because if you go look at Golden State Warriors are a perfect example.
Yeah.
They are paying, I believe the last number, and I could be really wrong, so don't fact check me right now, but I believe
I'm going to.
they're paying, please do. They're paying three times their actual salary in luxury cap money to keep the players that they have on that team. So basically, they're willing to way overspend to keep all those superstars together.
Which they can do.
And I don't like that model either.
They're charging so much for the tickets to that freaking place. So
let's see. Go to factcheck.com.
I think the NFL has the best model. I think it can be tweaked so that all parties are happy.
Well,
the owners aren't willing to do it right now.
And at the end of the day, I do agree with you, because it's like it goes back to the abuse of power. Because if you don't have a salary cap, you are going to be getting exactly what baseball is handing out. And baseball is the prime example, because you have, players that, are getting $350, almost $400 million in contracts. I mean, and you can thank Alex Rodriguez at one point in time for that exact problem.
Well, it's not just that. It's not the upper echelon that's the problem in baseball, in my opinion.
Well,
it's just the fact that you have teams like the Oakland A's who are spending less for an entire team than certain individual players are making. To the point where they spent less last year than any team in Major League Baseball history since free agency started, basically. Which is absurd.
But the thing is, and maybe that's just because of the fact that there's no salary cap, but I would still envision that that's just the overall mission statement, like the overall, this is the way we're going to run business, which, I mean, if you're got a league which has no salary cap, you should not be you should not be running in this whole Moneyball, way of thinking. I think the Rockies have kind of been in that way of thinking as well. And so it's just like, you can't exactly operate like that.
This is where the NFL has a floor. You have to spend to a certain amount within a 3-year period.
Right. Baseball has a floor as well. It's just the floor is so low, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to the abuse of power. And I agree with you that there absolutely wouldn't have to be a cap. I'm just saying that the way things are going about it right now with the fully guaranteed, it's going to in both ways, it's an abuse of power, because it's the way players are looking at it and wanting those fully guaranteed, deals, it's a full abuse of power, because they want that full guarantee money. And when you factor in the other underrated layer of this, and that is the health insurance part for NFL athletes, they want to be covered long-term so that they are covered. And so if there are injuries and there are things that happen to them, that they are, for the most part, covered. Because if you have these injuries that are going to be lengthy injuries, and ones that's going to be career injuries, and ones that you're going to be having even once you retire, you want to have those kinds of coverage in order, for something like that to happen. And so it's just so that's just a very under the radar, point and with all of this. And it's so I agree with you. You do have to hit a cap. And so you have to kind of find that middle ground of how you can make it all work.
Agreed. And the NFL is actually looking at this backwards, in my opinion. You could go to the negotiating table and say exactly what I did. We're going to keep the salary cap. We're going to put percentages on what you can spend max per position, but we're going to fully guarantee all your contracts. What we're going to take in return, though, is these health benefits are going to change. And some of this, because we're giving fully guaranteed contracts, some of this health benefits now is going to rely on you. We will help set up plans. How you spend your money, though, is going to be determined on your own self. If you want to risk your future and say, I'm going to spend all my money here and none of it on health insurance, then don't. But that's what the common man has to do. We all have to sit here and say, what kind of percentage am I going to pay on my health insurance? What kind of job am I going to get that it's guaranteed or not guaranteed? Is it part of my salary? What plan am I picking? The NFL could set up the exact same system for their players if they come to the table and say, we'll give you full guaranteed contracts so that you have the money to go do what you need to do for you and your family. But some of this is now going to be on you and your responsibility rather than us having to pick up all the bill after you retire.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation with the NFL. What else do you got for us, Pinky?
I got one last thing for you, Broncos related. And there's not been a huge, like, the free agent market this year is a little weak for the most part. There's not a lot of the top guys. So I don't think there's a lot of need to talk about everybody else. But I know you've posted it out there talking about the wide receivers that the Broncos have on the trade block, or at least are listening to calls. What are your thoughts on that, Cam?
Well, first off, I have to show this comment because Jordan's going to kill me if I don't say it. Yes, I personally believe that Jerry Jeudy in 2022 was the best offensive player on the football team.
That's
and
pretty easy to see.
Yeah, but also he is wide receiver one. But like he's also wide receiver one. He has been wide receiver one the last couple of years. People just are afraid to see it because Cortland had been kind of on the decline and Jeudy had been injured. And so you really weren't really seeing exactly his worth. And now you got the opportunity to see in that full stretch of games what Jerry Jeudy could be capable of and what he can be capable of in a Sean Payton kind of offense where you can spread the ball around. And so in this whole idea that you want to trade Jerry Jeudy, I don't want this hate speech, Caleb, about Jerry Jeudy, okay? Jerry Jeudy is not a trade candidate. If you trade Jerry Jeudy and you ask me for a first-round pick, I will entertain the idea. And I might even trade Jerry Jeudy, but it is only for a first-round draft pick. But for Courtland Sutton, if you give me a day 3 pick, I actually would turn that down. I would actually turn that down. And I would consider trading Courtland Sutton for a day 2 pick, just because that's the stronger likelihood that you're going to get a top 100.
You got to give me a 2. You got to give me at least. There's probably worth a conversation, at least a conversation if it's a 3rd round pick. I mean, you're clearing 18 off the book, so I guess maybe a 3.
But
I got no hate against Jeudy.
Good.
I will say, in my personal opinion, Corton got the raw shaft of the deal last year. I think he is just as talented as Jeudy. I think it's a 1A, 1B, depending on how you want to look at it. The only difference and the only thing that is in Judy's favor, in my personal opinion, is he's a couple years younger. That's it.
And it is guaranteed. You can put Charles Barkley on my face. It's a guarantee that the Denver Broncos will pick up the 5th-year option for Jerry Jeudy. So they're going to do it. And so I just think that I get it.
Is that due to talent or necessity, Cam?
Both.
At this point, is it due to talent or necessity that they would pick up his?
I think he has the talent.
Both. It is both, especially when you look at the whole scheme of things. You aren't just looking at talent and saying, let's pick up. You're looking at the entirety as a whole. And so it's talent, what he did in 2023, and with what he can become in Sean Payton's offense. I guarantee you, Jerry Jeudy, he's not the same size, certainly, as Michael Thomas, but Jerry Jeudy is the kind of wide receiver, you put him in Sean Payton's offense, he will average like 15 to 20 targets a game. And he's just a ridiculous player with this offense.
Sean Payton's ability to scheme Jeudy open, even with Judy's route running ability, will be off the charts.
Yes.
Cam, Thomas is crazy overrated.
No.
Drew Brees made that man.
Period. What I'm saying though is just like the target share, and the way that Sean Payton used Michael Thomas in creating him and getting him open and using him in space. Jerry Jeudy does that also by himself. So it's like you put both of them together. It's truly a match made in heaven, and especially with what we saw in Alabama with the way that they were using him in space.
Are people forgetting what Courtland Sutton did before his knee injury? I mean,
I think the thing with Sutton right now is you saw
with no quarterback. Keep in mind, Sutton did that with no quarterback.
I think the thing with Sutton is you saw a guy who did regress. I mean, let's be honest, he did regress, and the one, and so there. And I think the thing is, it's like, well, let me circle back for a second. Did he regress, or was it the fact that it was just
Russ
one
Wilson's
that
trash.
I don't know if it's that, but it's just like once again, like the level of quarterback play was just not the best. But also there were times where he did look a little disinterested at times in 2023.
Absolutely. I
or
saw
in
that
I
all the
would have
time.
too.
uh,
I would have too. I'm not going to blame him for that.
So, but that's not a Russell Wilson thing. That's just like probably an overall season thing as far as how you would be disinterested. But I mean, it's just like, so I think that like, there's no question. I think that the talent is still there because you clearly saw it in 2018, or you saw it even in some of 2019. Like you throw it up to Cortland Sutton, he's not a 50-50 ball winner. He's an 80-20 ball winner. I mean,
Right.
So I just think that, and to D Gentleman's point, like he had 3 different offenses, like, so, and to what you mentioned, Caleb, like he did put up 1,000 yards with 3 quarterbacks that one year with Joe Flacco.
And he's a
Lock
red zone monster.
Look,
So I don't know. It's just like, it's such a
my
weird
opinion, I don't trade Cortland Sutton. But if they do, I understand. You get an extra draft pick, you clear off $18 million off the cap, which gives you the ability to sign somebody else and let Sean Payton pick his guys.
The only reason you trade Cortland Sutton is because you try to get him off the books and you try to free that space up. In my opinion, if you want to win, you're not even discussing it.
Well, and so that's the other layer to this. Why I'm wondering, because I had multiple different things about the whole wide receiver
I
position.
moved Tim Patrick. That's why I'm tired of people saying, "Oh, that's going to be the ace in the hole." No, that's the one you should be moving. You should be keeping these 2 studs. If Miami has shown you anything, you keep your studs.
But the reason why we said it, the reason why you clear Sutton isn't necessarily his play. It's to recoup draft capital and to get him off the books. It has nothing to do with his play. It has to do with clearing the money and then getting him off the books. That's it. But the one thing I kind of keep coming back to on this is Cortland Sutton. I know at times, and we said earlier that he did look a little bit disinterested. He is a darn good run blocker. And if you move away from Cortland Sutton and this whole run block identity that is now being shaped within this team in this offseason, I don't know. Like and I actually talked to my good friend Mario about this today, but it's just like, and he actually brought that point up. It's like, and I really hadn't thought about it, but it's like, when you look at the whole run blocking situation, it's like, man, it just goes away with completely everything that, had been this whole identity of running the rock, because it's like, again, like you're talking about a situation where he is a really good run blocker. And if you want to be that successful of running the football, maybe Sean Payton doesn't see it on tape. I don't know. And again, I trust Sean Payton's, opinion more than anyone, but it's like, I don't know. Or maybe he feels Tim Patrick is a much better viable replacement of Cortland Sutton, I mean, so I don't know. But I personally, with the way things have gone and the aggressiveness that they've shown in free agency, I would not move on from Cortland Sutton. I would kind of take where things are currently, and then maybe you kind of let the draft day process handle things, even with Cortland Sutton. And so like if you have a team within the day 3 picks or even a day 2 pick, because you do have 2/3, you kind of figure out, maybe does a team bite on this on draft day? Maybe that's what you do. But the one thing I will say, though, just as far as the whole rumors go and the whole situation of Jarrett Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, I guarantee you, excuse me, that teams are calling about Jarrett Jeudy and they get redirected to Cortland Sutton, because there is no way that they're probably going to be getting rid of, Jarrett Jeudy at all.
Pinky.
I thought Caleb would have something to say, but he doesn't.
No, I told you, I'm gonna try to be either a little more quiet or more positive, because I think the Broncos have made a bunch of trash moves the last 3 years, plain and simple. I think the GM is trash. I think Sean Payton is the savior right now, and he's the only reason we're getting any of these free agents. So I'm going to try. I promise you, Pinky.
You're getting the free agents because a lot of this cash is coming their way, man.
They're not coming here if Sean Payton isn't the head coach, regardless of the money. You're not coming here to play with Russell Wilson.
You got the Walter Penner group, where they can dollar bills, y'all. The Johnny Manziel.
The McGlinchey thing. if Sean Payton's not here, McGlinchey's going to go play with Justin Fields, not Russell Wilson. Period. And I have no doubt in my mind that would be the case. Sean Payton is the reason all of these guys have signed. So, you know, I promised Pinky I'm going to try to stay away from the revisionist. I'm going to try to be a little bit more optimistic, but I'm not going to stop being realistic. I think Russell Wilson's on the decline. I think he is never going to be what he was. I think we drastically overpaid for him. And in my personal opinion, I think Sean Payton's doing everything he can to build a team right now so that he can move on from Russell Wilson in a year when that cap hit isn't crazy.
Well, I will say off-season wise, I would say that it sort of would say that's not the case as far as with Russell Wilson. Like that they're going all in because they know they have this quarterback that was vastly underused, whether that was by his play or whatever, however you want to say it. But like, I mean, like vastly underused, and you saw it in the last two games under Rosberg how he played with coaching. Like, it's. I mean, so
I've told you before, Cam. I think those last two games people are putting too much stock in because they played teams who had nothing to play for. So it's going to
Chargers still made the playoffs, though, didn't they?
What?
Chargers still made the playoffs, and they have no excuse for losing that game.
They made the playoffs, but they didn't have to be playing that game. They didn't have to win that game. It didn't do anything for them to be playing that game. So,
but they did play that game.
The motions.
They still played all the starters played that game, and they were hurt by it because they got injuries.
I think that's why they got hurt, because they weren't out there playing. They were doing a walkthrough while the Broncos were playing, and that's the easiest way to get injured. Is if you're not out there going 100% and the other team is, it's almost a guarantee for an injury. And I think that's what happened. I think all the Charger players are like, why are we in this game? I think people are putting too much stock into Russell Wilson looking good those last couple of games because they're playing against opponents who didn't care.
I do.
That's my take. Just my take.
Oh,
Chiefs still cared. Chiefs were still working on that number one seed. They were still They had to work till the last game to get that number one seed.
Did they care though, Pinky? I mean, honestly, that score of the game didn't say they cared too much, because if they cared, they would have burned the Broncos. We all know the Chiefs were far superior last year to the Broncos.
They still probably could have, well, at least one of the games maybe. But, well, I don't know, maybe both. But, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, the Broncos' best games were against the Chiefs, bar none.
You always play great in the division. I'm not gonna take that away. That's a proven NFL fact for sure. But I think people need to pay a lot more attention to what Russell did throughout the season rather than the last two games.
Oh,
I think Ackman was burned as the fall guy. I think Russ is on the decline. I'm just going to leave it at that.
No, you're cool. We're cool. Besides, the fact you're a Cornhuskers fan, it all cancels it all out.
My man. Oh, goodness. Finally, it pays off, Pinky.
These fucking guys.
Pinky's got to hear me go, hope springs eternal every start of the season, and then woe is me as the season progresses. So,
again, I just want you to have the negativity about Nebraska that you have about the Broncos.
That's why that's not possible. The turnover in college makes it possible for you to have hope every year. That's not the same in the NFL. It's not the same.
But also, there's like this. There's the realism that you have as a Huskers fan. But also, when you are a Huskers fan, you are going to bleed red and blue, or red.
No,
blue
Cam,
in the face and red. Because
Cam,
of
there is no realism. This guy has literally told us every single year that Martinez is going to be in the Heisman vote.
I showed you national pundits, national talking heads who were saying the same thing as me. So it wasn't like I was just out there on my own, like head in the clouds. There were other people who were getting paid to do this saying the same thing as I was.
And by the way, now that I have a fellow Cornhusker here, and obviously this is like many years old, but can we stop this whole Joe Burrow narrative? about with Nebraska. Can we please stop this narrative? Like, yes, he probably wanted to go to Nebraska, but do people not remember the year that Adrian Martinez had before that whole conversation?
Oh, Pinky, remember how I said he was a Heisman dark horse going into his sophomore year? Legit Heisman dark horse?
I'm just saying. Sounds like Shadur Sanders.
I mean, nobody's saying that but Dion, but
no, he's literally getting Heisman consideration. Shadur Sanders.
He is. He absolutely is. Pinky, Matt Rule's bringing us back to greatness. Okay, Matt Rule's bringing us back to greatness. So I'm not going to be shutting up anytime soon, my dude.
And we're gonna get Dylan Raiola.
He's coming, baby. He's coming. Pinky, final thoughts. We'll let you get the last word in tonight, my guy.
I don't. Caleb, you know me. I like to talk. I'm speechless.
Cam, high five. It was a great pleasure having you on. You are welcome anytime, and that's not just because you're a fellow Husker. It's a pleasure chopping it up with you. Pinky has added this into the closing, so I will go ahead and make sure it is now part of it continuously. We are part of the MHRT network. We are very appreciative to be a part of this network and have great teammates, if you will, like Cam as part of this. Check out the other podcasts. There's a lot of great information, a lot of great knowledge you can get from some of these other shows.
There's 5280. There's the Mainly podcast. There's the Cluster Puck podcast. We just got a new one.
Yes, it's actually a big show. Like, it's a big get. It is the BPA show with Patrick Quixote, my good friend Patrick Quixote, and Marcus Boggs returns to the MHRT network with the BPA show. It's a great show, and for anybody that feels dumb and don't know what BPA means, I know Caleb knows what BPA means, but it is.
What are you saying, Cam? What are you saying?
Well, I mean, by the eye test. BPA, for anybody that doesn't know, is best player available. It is the best player available show, and so it's basically draft centered, and so it's going to be basically NFL draft oriented. So and they're going to try their best to kind of keep it very, very objective through it. So, and it's not even going to be Denver Broncos oriented or anything. So that's the show. The Neighborhood is another one. Broncos Breakdown.
We got the Wild West.
Wild West. And then obviously our first stream.
Bronco Bill.
We're going to be pushing this, people. So pay attention. We're trying to do something special here. We appreciate all the support. So pay attention. Keep an eye out.
And to stump real quick, because our first show is tomorrow. The Mainly Broncos podcast first show is tomorrow at the exact same time that this one was at 7:30. We may not go about 3 hours like the length of time that this one was, but we enjoyed our time here. But no, I'm kidding. Hey, I've done 3-hour podcasts before, and it's been enjoyable. So I can't necessarily hate it. I've been in this wheelhouse before back when I had like the Cameron Parker Show podcast and stuff. So it's definitely been in my wheelhouse before. So it's nothing that I'm new, nothing new. But I mean,
we'll do an hour, we'll do 3 hours, depending on how much fun we're having, depending on what the conversation does.
And Glenn and Mundungus, if you're listening, we might even make it 5 hours if you just give us the go ahead. But yeah, so tune into the Mainly Broncos podcast. It is myself. For a little bit of a history lesson real quick before we go, it's myself, it's Brandon Miller, no affiliation with the Brandon Miller of Alabama, and then Matty Moles. You guys can follow all of them at Brandon Miller PO and Matty Moles Pod on Twitter. The show handle at Mainly Broncos. The show, like I said earlier, is going to be free flowing. It's going to be conversational. I think that you guys are absolutely, you guys are just absolutely going to enjoy this podcast. I know that we've had a lot of people chime in about the podcast before. And so I'm really happy to be going to streaming. It's something that we've definitely been dreaming about myself, that we wanted to get Mainly Broncos just streamed. And so also, since it's the first kind of public appearance about it, I also want to take time to thank Mile High Sports for the few years that we were a part of that organization and part of the podcast family. We really enjoyed being a part of that family, and we certainly wish things would have worked out for the best, but we certainly enjoy the future that we can have with MHRT and kind of take that next step into our podcast journey and to be a part of the MHRT network. So thank you to everybody who has continually supported the Mainly Broncos podcast. It is a fabulous podcast. I'm not trying to talk out of my own butthole right now. Like, the Mainly Broncos podcast is a great podcast. We've had great guests on before. We've had Ryan Leaf on our show. We've had Dalton Reisner on our show. We had the great NFL Network James Palmer on our show. We've had some great people, who have been a part of this show. We've even had Brooks Austin, a college beat writer for the Georgia Bulldogs, on our show, who happened to be on with Dalton Reisner. So we kind of we dabble in both. We do the draft, but we also talk some NFL, but we also talk about our beloved Denver Broncos. So again, we love you. And I'm thankful to be a part of the MHRT network full time with y'all.
Big things, people. Big
That's
things.
awesome.
If you're paying attention to this one, we're starting to do some big things. Cameron's going to be bringing in the heat. Check out the other podcasts. I'm telling you, there's a lot of smart, intelligent, well thought out things being said that you can, learn from. On that note, it's the way we always end it, and it's never going to change. Do not take for granted that time you can spend with your loved ones, family, friends, anybody you consider in your inner circle. Love it, cherish it. We appreciate all the support. As always, if you've got anything to say, anything to talk about, anything you got questions about, hit us up, reach out to us. We love you all. We're out.
Go Big Red.
He goes and ruins it like that.